Cool. I feel like in the future we should record like the entire time, so that way they can watch you get up and out of frame like 30 times.
Well, we're recording now, and I'll just add all of this to the bloopers reels in the future, and we'll just do a whole video of bloopers
Okay.
reels.
Cool.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of our SOMU series. We're going to be covering a different broad range of topics for this series, but basically, this is just our informal way to lend some knowledge and kind of give back to the special operations medic community and just some lessons learned and some stuff that we have, some pointers, tips, and tricks, and so on and so forth. So this whole series is really going to be an experiment where we're going to talk about, basically a situation, the unintentional stay behind operations with delayed to no evacuation. And for this series, we're going to be bringing in different medics, but mostly you'll see myself and my guest today, Bryce. Bryce is going to be joining us for this episode. Bryce, how you doing, man?
I'm so good. How's everybody else doing? Are you doing good, Josh?
Oh, I'm good. There's no one else here, but I'm good. Yeah.
The viewer's good. I assume that the viewer is good. They're watching this, so they must.
I'm hoping they're good. And if they are good, we got to do the YouTube thing where we say like, hit the notification bell, and follow us. Yeah, do all those things. I do this because that's what they do in YouTube videos. Yeah. Point down there.
Down there.
Yeah, comment down there on this video. You want to see more or less, whatever it is. So yeah, so
algorithms and things.
Yeah. Help us with the YouTube algorithm, as they say. So yeah, Bryce, you want to introduce yourself? Let everyone know, all the viewers now. It's not listeners anymore, it's viewers. So you want to let them know who you are?
So I'm Bryce Dryden. I was a Ranger medic for a few years. I spent a couple years in 160th as a flight medic. Both those were in the Army. Got out after 8 years total, and then started teaching medicine, and also did some humanitarian aid work stuff. Keep trying to go back, but political situations and pandemics and all that stuff just kind of gets in the way. So trying to do it from afar now.
Yeah. You did some pretty awesome stuff, man. I think that's kind of where we started getting onto this topic, and we were talking about some of the lessons learned and how you found yourself in some pretty cool situations where you had to be kind of resource wise and what you were using. So
some situations were a lot more cool than others, but yeah.
Hopefully this pandemic chills out and you can start traveling and get some more experience and help out there, because that's a pretty cool trip.
Yeah. And I mean, it's cool to help, and it's also just cool to learn things and be able to tell people who are still doing this kind of thing, how to do it better.
Absolutely. And we did do a podcast on it. So if people want to listen and more on what it is Bryce has done, all the cool things, go check out the podcast. So Bryce is on there. The Somcast, the podcast Somcast.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, so that's me. Josh, do you want to introduce yourself, or are you satisfied with how everyone knows you?
I'm satisfied how they know me now. They may know me more in the future, but this is who I am. So let's kind of, so like I said, we're gonna be talking about a series of different stuff, mainly talking about the resources you would need in an environment like that. And we're gonna really touch on first drugs. So first we're gonna talk about drugs of choice for your limited resource environment. Some of the drugs we're going to discuss will be lidocaine, Tylenol, Benadryl, some of your antibiotics like Doxy, and of course the drug of choice for almost anyone, I believe, is ketamine when you're looking at pain. But there are alternatives to that, and one of the first drugs we'll talk about will be touching in that space. But also, if you have any opinions or you have any suggestions, hit us up in the comments, let us know so we can do a video on that, because we want to give you guys as much information as possible. We're also going to talk some of the multi-use consumables and devices. Obviously, everything needs to have a purpose in an aid bag, and especially when you're working in a limited resource area, you want to have a multi-purpose item in there. Some of those items are going to include like, like ET tubes, like what are the different things you could do with an ET tube? They're not just for innovation, obviously. So we'll talk about some of that stuff. Documentation, always an important piece. And then also, what resources are you bringing out with you? If you don't have access to electricity, you're probably not going to have an iPad with a million different resources on it. Are you going to rely on telehealth and have to do calls, or are you going to bring a book out with you, like Where There Is No Doctor? So we'll talk on a lot of those different things. And yeah, again, we want to hear what you have. Um, Other than that, I mean, you have any like specific topics that you, or any we're gonna say like different tips, something like big that you learned basically planning for some of your stuff, like when you looked at pack out, not specific items, but like just how do I get my head wrapped around working in this environment?
For sure. Like there have been some things that I picked up along the way that I've learned from my students or learned from people that I'm working with overseas that, like what's the one thing that you would carry with you? And I had one guy say povidone iodine, like betadine. And I was like, okay, interesting. Like you can clean water with it, I guess, clean up wounds. And he's like, you can do all sorts of stuff. You can add it to sugar and honey. You can, treat fungal infections. You can dilute it for eye drops. There's a lot of stuff you can do with some of these things that we don't normally think about. So this is kind of an avenue for how to discuss those things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. Yeah, I think we don't. That's the problem I've found is whenever, especially when you're working in the special operations community, you have a ton of resources and assets and
Mhm.
support. But when you start working with some of your local counterparts and you go in an area, the best thing to do is learn from them. Like, what would you have? Like, what are you using right now? Especially some of those remote clinics where aid workers are working and they don't have access to big budgets or a lot of consumables. They may have found a way to clean things and reuse things that you never even thought of because we're just throwing it away because we're a consumer based medical system. So that's really,
Yeah. North American Rescue told me I could only use their tourniquet once and throw it away.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I think that's an important piece. I mean, tourniquets alone, like how many times have we, and believe me, cat tourniquets, softy tourniquets save a ton of lives and they're amazing pieces of technology. But I think people have also forgotten how to use some of those improvised techniques, like improvised tourniquets and such. I've spent a lot of time teaching people how to do that again, especially locals. So I think that's another big piece. Maybe we'll touch on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Enjoying some delicious coffee this morning.
I'm, I'm enjoying things other than coffee.
Yeah, yeah. What's your drink of choice?
Uh, Bubbly,
Yeah,
but
right.
also
I'm only drinking coffee right now. I'll switch later. Usually our listeners know that I enjoy a tasty liquid mood modificator, but I have yet to switch over yet. So which is
yeah.
probably good.
There's a YouTube series about medicine, and medicinally, it's helping me to stay a little bit more focused.
There
So
you go. There you go. um yeah, so anyways, like I said, this list will not be all inclusive. Obviously we don't know everything, and I will look to the viewers to give us a comment on what it is that you've seen in the past. What would you like to see more of? And yeah, that's really kind of some of the aspects I wanted to talk about. Is there so like, I guess a little bit on the mindset piece. So whenever I found myself getting ready to do a trip like this or having a plan for somewhere where I may not be or may not have access, I've really looked to a lot of outside agencies and like resources. A lot, like you were saying, Bryce, is like a lot of Googling, man. Like looking back at those old videos or those old resources and documents on people who have done little to nothing. I touched on that book Where There Is No Doctor. I know you've probably read that before, haven't you?
yeah, I've definitely used it as a reference time or two. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say I've read cover to cover, but it's a great reference to be able to look up solutions, complex problems that you may not be able to handle with a standard of care that we normally use.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the biggest pieces to that is the uh, like having hard copies of things. So that is a hard copy item. We've really gone pretty digital with a lot of our uh, technology lately, and I think that a hard copy book or the COROM, I'll drop COROM. I'll go ahead and plug COROM, the College of Offshore and Remote Medicine. They have a flip guide, a field guide that's pretty dope that I've used in the past. And that thing has a ton of resources in it, and even like the old SF Medical Handbook. You remember that guy? I don't even know if
Yeah.
that thing still floats around. Does it?
Oh, it does. It hasn't been updated since 2007, as far as I know. But I mean, while some things change a lot, some things don't, and it's still a really good reference. They're getting back to subjects that where to find good information. When you lose your ability to use like today's best practices, a really good place to go is where those things originated.
Mm,
So, like, I've been looking up recipes for how to preserve my own blood and like how to make my own citrate. And I've talked to some guys in the schoolhouse that are really, really smart on that and have done the research before me. So they helped me out quite a bit. But by going back to those like World War I resources, like where they were doing the research and figuring out what worked before we found something that worked a little bit better and went away from the simpler things.
yeah, that's pretty dope. I didn't even think about that. I heard rumors of the citrate experiments happening at the schoolhouse. So it's good to see that like there's something coming from that. And also the ICRC, they have awesome references. The World Health Organization, you can definitely hit them up and take a look at their websites. And there's like old documents that I know that they have out there for working in like remote field hospitals and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of old lessons that were learned that we forgot that you can relearn by going back to those resources. I know this, video series is going to be about medicine, but I know when, my dad and other people were doing jungle warfare in the 70s, they were referencing, Marines from the Philippines and the kind of stuff that the lessons that they learned in those conflicts, they were able to bring forward to, 80 years later.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's crazy. I think, and it's funny too, because like take we're always going to hit this topic, but take like blood for example, right? Like we went one way for a long period of time, and then we looked at back at World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and we're like, oh, they were using blood products back then. Well, it's probably best. We should go back to that. It's doable, and you got freeze dried plasma components, obviously, and now we're on whole blood. Whole blood is the best, right? And we'll talk on that
Yeah.
too, because there's ways to use whole blood over like in resource limited areas. You can do field blood transfusions, and we can talk a little bit on that. And like you're saying on citrate and how to preserve some of those units of blood. So sweet.
Yeah. Some crazy stuff, even without using preservatives, that just like stirring the blood until it formed clots and then just discarding those clots. So now it won't clot anymore. Like
Oh,
there's,
oh,
yeah, there's crazy stuff.
yeah.
I feel like we're getting too into it now.
We're getting into the weeds, but I feel like for that talk, what's up? You broke up.
I mean, there will definitely be a video forthcoming on blood. I imagine there must. But there's a lot of really cool lessons that we'll pick back up again.
Yeah, and there's always going to be a blood talk in anything that comes, any series that deals with medicine. There will always be a blood talk, and we'll try to bring in maybe some experts. Maybe bring in Ricky. He can talk all the crazy sciences and get all of our heads spinning on that kind of stuff. I think that'd be a good one too. But yeah,
Yeah, Ricky is a good resource for like molecular processes and stuff.
yeah,
And like maybe I can hit it more from a tradecraft perspective.
hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Good.
Sweet. Well, yeah, I wanted to keep this video pretty short. I think we covered the intro and what we're going to be hitting and topics and so on and so forth. So I think that's pretty good for today. You got anything else you want to add to it, Bryce?
Um, no, maybe just like continuing the definition of why we're doing this. So there's um, this thought experiment on, if you were in a worst case scenario, you're in a country and that country gets invaded by a neighboring country or whatever, and now you've lost your supplies or at least your supply chain. So I have to work on sourcing things from the community. Um, or you're in your own country and some bad stuff happens, political situations, military coups. There's all sorts of bad stuff that can happen that can reduce our ability to use the resources that we're used to dealing with.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and
So
I think that it doesn't only apply to the special operations community, and you can see yourself as a civilian working in an aid capacity, or with a State Department, or any myriad of different jobs, and be caught very easily in that situation. Even just a normal civilian who, like, let's take like a very like Syria or Iraq, ISIS moves in, you're now cut off and you're stuck basically behind enemy lines. How are you as a civilian treating your family, treating those who cannot reach resources, or doctors are now being pulled away for to support the war effort. So maybe everybody has a little first aid kit that has some betadine in it. They have, you can find things at a local pharmacy, a vet clinic, right off of the shelf over the counter. So we're going to touch on a lot of those different, I guess, areas or ways to kind of bolster your medical capabilities to care for yourself and others in I'm not going to in a crappy situation.
yeah, less than optimal, suboptimal situation.
Suboptimal, below the optimal. Cool. All right.
Sure, he was going with that S sound. That S sound.
Yeah, exactly. Do you got anything else for the viewers?
No, just as we come up with more ideas, we're going to be helped along by the viewers. So, like Josh said before, anything that you think should be added to this list, some stuff you'd like us to explore, some problems maybe you faced in the past that you didn't have a good option for, like put them in the comments below and we can try and figure some stuff out.
Heck yeah, I love it. Sweet. All right. Well, like I said, like, share, follow us, hit the like, subscribe button, notifications, help the YouTube algorithm, and then please head over to www.som-c.org and help us support our military special operations medics. So appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next show.
Bye.
Bye.